Shalom, I'm Nama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue. And we're talking about extending the Shemitah, extending the holy days, like how we extend Shabbat and Chagim, however we can, make the most, really revel in the amazing opportunity of these sacred days, these divine gifts. So today, can you tell us, how do we begin the Shemitah?
Well, we have to begin it before Shemitah begins. So there are a number of sources for us to discuss. And the first one is Moen Katan. Again, see more in your YouTube and you'll get to see the sources. Mayam Shalifnei Roshana. What is the nature of the days before Roshana? Keditznan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Ad Masai Chorsim B'Sadeh Ilan Erev Shvis. How long are we allowed to plow in an orchard before Shemitah? Beija says, Kolzman Shiafe Lepiri. As long as it helps the fruit. Meaning, if this plowing now will help the fruit to grow on the Shemitah year, then it's prohibited. If it's so long before Shemitah, it won't actually help the fruits development on Shemitah, it would be permitted. Beis Hillel Omrim Adat Zeres. And Beis Hillel says you can plow your fields until Shavuos. Now, from Shavuos on, you can't plow a orchard. V'krovim divrei elu lios k'divrei elu. And the words of one are close to the words of the other, meaning it's approximately the same time. Viad Masai Chorshin stay halavan Erev Shvis. And how long can you plow a grain field Erev Shvis? Mishetechla alecha. Until the moisture has gone out of the field. V'kolzman shmdei adam chorshim lita mikshaos umidlaos. And as long as people are plowing their fields in order to be able to plant squashes and gourds, it would be prohibited. Rabbi Shimon says, if you say this, then you've allowed each person to define his own time. Ela, but b'stei lavan ad Pesach, on a field, grain otherwise, until Pesach, ub'stei heilan ad Atzeres, and in a orchard until Shavuos. So, thus the Gemara in Moed Katan. The Yerushalmi in Shvis is very similar. Ad emasai chorshin b'stei ha'ilan erev Shvis. How long you're allowed to plow, an orchard in the 6th year. Beishamai kol zman shu yafin lepri, as long as it's good for the fruit, says Beishamai. Beis Hillel adatzeres. Beis Hillel says until Shavuos v'krovim divrei elu lios k'divrei elu, and these words are close to each other. B'chari shufatir tishbos, so that's the Mishnah. The Gemara says you will rest from plowing and from harvesting. B'chari shikitzru aser ve'ezei zei chari shel erev shvis shu nichnas l'shvis. So which plowing is prohibited? It's plowing something that will be harvested on the Shemitah year. All right? Ubekitzer shecharisho aser. So any time that the harvest of this would have the halachas of Shemitah, then I'm not allowed to plow for that.
So but you can still plant things if they're going to come sprout before the Shemitah.
Right.
But you wouldn't plow?
Hold on. The Ezeze Katzir Shel Shvis Shu Yotze L'Motzi Shvis. And what is the plowing that would go into after Shvis? The Imkan Lamanimar Chorshim Ad Roshana. Excuse me, I missed the line. So anything that I would be harvesting in the 8th year that has the sanctity of Shemitah, I also can't plow for it, even though it might be in the 8th year that I would be doing it. So the Gemara asks, V'im ken lama nemar chorshim ad Rosh Hashanah? if so, why do we say we have a tradition that says you're allowed to plow until Rosh Hashanah? Rabbi Krosby b'shem Rabbi Yochanan Rabban Gamliel Obeistinu Hitiru B'Isser Shnei Prakim Arishanim. Rabbi Krosby says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Rabban Gamliel of Yavna and his Beis Din negated these two things, meaning the prohibition of plowing before he's saying is actually a rabbinic prohibition, and when Shmitah after Chorban Bais, after the destruction of the temple, is only a rabbinic prohibition. So therefore, after the destruction of the temple, Rabban Gamliel and his Beis Din allowed us to do this. So the Rambam says, Avodas haaretz b'shnas shishis shloshim yom samuch l'shvis. The working the land 30 days before the Shemitah is prohibited. Asura halacha l'moshe Sinai. And this prohibition is a halacha l'moshe Sinai. Mipnei shu mitakna l'shvis. Because if you're doing something in the last 30 days, you're getting it ready for the Shemitah year. V'davar zeh bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim. And this was true when the temple was standing, when the Shemitah was from the Torah. Shenamar mipnei shmua. Because this is what we have, shene'asar mipnei shmua, that was prohibited from our tradition. V'gazru chamim shelo yu chorshim sidei ha'ilan erev shvis bisman hamikdash ela ad hatzeres. And the chachamim said that you cannot plow a orchard more than 30 days from Shavuos onward. V'stei lavan ad Pesach, and a field without trees in it, you can't plow after Pesach. Ubizman she'ein mikdash, and then the time when there is no mikdash, mutarim be'avodas haaretz ad Rosh Hashanah kedin Torah. Then you're allowed to work the land until Rosh Hashanah, like the Torah law. The Mishnah in Shvis, Mishnah base, Perek base, Mishnah Vav, says, Ein notin ve'ein marvichin ve'ein markivin erev Shvis pachos mishloshim yom lifnei Rosh Hashanah. You're not allowed to plant a seedling or graft in any way in the year before the Shemitah, less than 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. Vimnata or hivrich or hirkiv, but if you did any of these things, if you planted the sapling or you grafted something, yakor, you have to uproot the plant. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol harkava she'ena koletes l'shlosha yamim, shuv ena koletes. Anything that doesn't grab within the first 3 days won't do it. Won't do it at all. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Omrim l'shtei Shabbosos. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say two weeks. Now, how to understand the Mishnah is very difficult. There are 3 understandings found in the Rishonim. The Rash, which we explained was a commentator from Spain, says that the prohibition is because of Tosefet Shvis, the addition that we're required to add to Shemitah. And we don't have Tosefet Shvis in our time. We don't have the additions to Shemitah, so therefore this doesn't apply at all. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam disagree. They say that something cannot grab its roots at all during the Shemitah, and therefore it must be rooted firmly before Shemitah, otherwise there is a prohibition, even in our time. The Rambam that we just said, it says it must, it's also in the Parashut Mishnayos of the Rambam, that it must grab, it must be attached before Shvi, and then you need another 30 days. So, as we learned, one of the opinions of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, which is the majority opinion over Rabbi Yehuda, is that you need 2 weeks. So if you need 2 weeks and 30 days for trees, that is, you must have planted it before Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is the last day, on Tu B'Av you could plant. Tu B'Av is the last day that you could plant. After that, you have 2 weeks and 30 days.
For a tree.
For anything concerning a tree, right? Other things might be faster. For instance, if they, as we learned previously, the Chazon Ish says, if they they broke the surface of the ground, if the seeds germinated and broke the surface of the ground, at least some of them, then there wouldn't be a prohibition of svichim on those things. So the assumption would be from that you would have to plant them early enough that you expect that they would break the surface. And according to the Rambam, if they do not break the surface in that time, the Rambam says you have to uproot a tree, so apparently you'd also have to uproot these things as well. It could be, there's another reason to uproot it. So it might be we're doing prohibited work in the land. That's one reason. And the more it grows, the more prohibited work we're doing in the land, so you'd have to do it. Another reason why you might have to do it is if a tree's orla that you own, that people walking by are allowed to take from, I have to mark it as orla so people know they can't use it and they won't use it in a prohibited way. So to here, you might have, if it's sviching, you might have to mark it. It might be difficult to do with, a whole series of tomato plants or something like that. Therefore, we're not allowed to do such a thing. We're not allowed to leave it there. That could be a possibility. Most poskim seem to go like Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, that you need the 30 days plus apparently the time in advance, which works out, although for a different reason, to be like the Rambam's opinion. So for planting a tree or anything like that, something that would live for many years, it cannot be planted after Tu B'Av of Erev Shvis. Now, this is going to be broadcast on Shemitah long after this time has passed. So you'll have to remember this in another 7 years or so when you're figuring out when you're going to plant your trees.
Right. So, but like a strawberry plant, you need to transplant, let's say, like within 3 days or at least 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. Is that correct?
Right. Anything that would be transplanted that would not be a multi-year thing would have to need to have at least 3 days to grab to the ground, so to speak.
Right, to establish its roots in the ground. Now, like some strawberries last a couple of years.
Yeah, it's still not a multi-year project.
It's not like a 20-year.
It's not like a tree that can live for a long, long time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and next time we get more of Tosefet Shvis.
Even more Shemitah holiness. What a blessing.